feels absolutely fantastic to be back here on the stage. It's an incredible feeling to see each one of you, although the lights are glaring so much I can't really see you individually. I know that there's a mass of you and I hope you're all going to be cheering for me. So yeah, thank you. Great, thanks. Thanks for setting that point really clear. I'm going to do a little bit of a change of pace here. You heard a lot of stuff about many different things, including tech and success and failure and so on. I'm here to talk to you about miracles. Miracles and metamorphosis. I'm a huge believer in miracles. Small miracles, large miracles, phenomenal miracles, health miracles, relationship miracles, career miracles. And when you are in the space of working with the Indian woman professional for as long as you have, as I have, you don't just believe in miracles, you have to rely on them. The point about miracles, though, is the minute you have a change in perception, you will actually start seeing them all around you. And that is the operative word, change. And I'm going to tell you a kutti story about another word for change, metamorphosis. Now there are these two organisms. One is the quagga and the other is the blue moon butterfly. The quagga, as you can see it's a subspecies of the zebra family. And it's a very, very docile, very soft kind of a animal. It faced a huge existential challenge around the 19th century when humans began hunting it, indiscriminately. And they began hunting it for a reason, good reason or not, but for a reason. What was that reason? That reason was that the quagga was very similar to the livestock that human beings used. They even consumed the same resources, but they were not useful in the same way as livestock were. And the other reason was that the quagga could not develop skills like how you can, like how the zebra developed a skill or like how the deer developed the skill to outrun predators. So that was the situation of the quagga. What could help it? Miracle or metamorphosis? And then you have the blue moon butterfly. The blue moon butterfly, gorgeous species, it's found in Madagascar, in parts of Asia, in parts of Australia and so on. And it's such a fantastic butterfly that people would be able to spot it out among varied butterfly species. And then all of a sudden, in the, barely about 3 or 4 decades ago, the blue moon butterfly started seeing absolutely shocking differences in the male to female composition. The male of the species started dying by the thousands, having been infected by a parasite. So the blue moon butterfly faced a huge crisis. What would save it, miracle or metamorphosis? Let's talk about another species, which you and me are very familiar with. The Indian woman professional. And I want to talk about her because, is she facing some kind of an existential crisis? If all the statistics are to be believed, she is one of those, species that could become extinct. Despite all that happens in terms of, all the challenges that she faces, she's plagued by a bunch of things. She's plagued, you probably may not be able to read all of that stuff, unsafe work environment, patriarchy, lack of skills. The fact that the Indian woman professional is not part of what is classified by the World Economic Forum as globally attractive talent. What is globally attractive talent? Talent that is resilient, that possesses current and updated skills, and that possesses the power of communication. Apparently, Indian women professionals are an endangered species because they kind of don't possess all of these in good measure. And on top of it, in spite of the way in which we all flex our career models, career primary, career and home, home primary. Vaidi was there and he was talking about behind every successful man, woman and all that. I'll tell you, behind every successful woman is a reliable maid at home. That sound of the bell ringing in the morning, can anything equal the music of that? Never. So whatever type of career model you use, career and home, home primary, Lisa Ray, she spoke about actually being home primary. She didn't want to be career primary. She used career as a distraction. Imagine, these are the different models that we all follow. And typically, what happens when we follow these kinds of models? We seem to be constantly wondering whether we're doing the right thing. What is going to save our careers? Miracles or metamorphosis? And I have to tell you, having built my own career and the career of my organization, Avtar, in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, and working with the Indian woman professional, 3 or 4 years ago when the pandemic struck, we were at a crossroads ourselves. Is Avtar going to survive? The fact that we are talking to organizations about the beauty of diversity, gender diversity, inclusion, all of that stuff, is all of that ever going to be useful? Will we be relevant? Will the 50, 60 people that were working together with me, would they all lose their jobs? Would kind of, all those EMIs and dreams come crashing down? Those were questions that, I was asking myself and we were asking ourselves. And at that time, we did a research. We did a research in partnership with EY, and that research was simply to find out what were women doing while facing the pandemic. And I have to tell you, it was the most incredible piece of research. The most amazing piece of research that kind of, told us, hey, the Indian woman professional is not a species to be messed with. She is going to be around for a very long time. And how is she going to do that? We saw you. We saw you doing amazing things. We saw women using the warrior style of leadership. There were tough times at home. Probably the only sole wage earner had lost his job. People had died, and we saw the women display grit. They displayed grit in the face of adversity. They took on greater challenges, and they became warriors. And then we saw the women become bootstrappers. Bootstrappers. They actually relied on their past academic successes. They decided to upskill themselves. They said, if this job is not working, I will apply for another new job. They became bootstrappers. You became bootstrappers. And then we saw powerhouses. People who said, okay, this is VUCA times. How do we counter a VUCA time? We counter it with agility and with curiosity. We counter it by dipping even greater into our networks. And that's what happened with the Indian woman professional. Despite global averages of women having actually been sent out of their workplaces, the Indian woman professionals' numbers are actually lesser than the rest of the world. And I have data to prove that. And we also saw women being savants. We saw them turn inward. We saw them touch their own deep authenticity, actually come up and say and share their raw emotions. It might have been a Zoom call, it might have been a Teams call, and we were only interacting with each other through those little black rectangle boxes, but still, we were authentic with each other. We were savants. And then finally, we had many of you being matriarchs. Matriarchs, probably the sole provider of the family, probably the one that had to, amidst, in the face of all of those challenges that we went through, demonstrate empathy. Demonstrate that it was totally okay to be vulnerable. Haven't you seen these women? Haven't you all been these women? Haven't you understood at every stage, every step of the way, that it may be do or die, but then we are not going to die today, we are going to live to face another day. That's what we understood from the research that we did. And what we also realized because of that is an organization like Avtar, which relies on organizations like Target. And I'm not up here and saying this just because Target invited me to speak, but I'm saying this because we conduct India's largest, most difficult gender analytics exercise called the Avtar and Seramount, Best Companies for Women in India. And we actually look at good practices that companies follow, good practice, having a prevention of sexual harassment training, having an ICC, good practice. And then we see best practices, for instance, having a mentoring program, ensuring there is skilling. And then we see next practices, where you actually create intentional career paths for your women professional. You actually get them to be upskilled, even beyond what they are, to make them ready for the future. And then there are practices which I call spiritual practices. They're not good practice, best practice, or next practice. Because spiritual practices don't just benefit the company doing them, they benefit an entire community like this. And therefore, thanks to organizations like Target, thanks to amazing people like Bruce and like Shanti and like Rakesh and that entire team that works in putting together this amazing conference that today you're a part of, we bounced back. And today, I'm happy to tell you, we have grown over 200% since the time of the pandemic, and we are about 130 people strong at Avtar. So, coming back to our friend the Quagga, what did the Quagga do? The Quagga became extinct, which is why you don't see it in the zoos or in any of the other wildlife sanctuaries today. It became extinct because it was neither able to build the skill of being useful to humans, nor was it able to build the speed to outrun predators in the jungle. And what did the blue moon butterfly do? The blue moon butterfly employed the most amazing strategy of all time, evolution. And I'm going to talk to you about what that evolution really means for each one of us Indian women professionals. The blue moon butterfly developed a kind of resistance to the parasite by sheer evolution, and at last count, which was about 3 years ago, 40% of the population were back to being males. So that's amazing science, that's amazing evolution, that's the power of Mother Nature, which I want to share with you. When we look at biological evolution, we all know the 3 principles of natural selection, don't we? The principle of variation, principle of inheritance, principle of competition. Principle of variation, you see that beautiful golden hue that the honeybee has, right? That and the fact that for every hive you have only one queen bee, those are principles of variation. That's what caused the bee to survive millennia. Principle of inheritance. You'll find that giraffes grew longer and longer necks. They became taller and taller to reach the tops of the trees where the delicious fruits were there. Principle of inheritance. And when the mom giraffe did that, the baby giraffe also grew even longer necks. Principle of competition. When you found that you had to outrun predators in the jungle, you actually developed those skills necessary to be able to fight all of those predators and still survive. My dear women, in today's day and age, more than all of these principles that you saw, I want to talk to you about something which biologists very rarely allude to. And that is also a principle of evolution, and that principle is actually called altruism. That means when you want to survive as an individual, you actually have to help the tribe survive. If you want to land those jobs, you have to make sure that the people around you also are supported and helped. Let's take the example of the principle of variation. Now, in the case of principle of variation, it means that if you have identical skills to the person next to you, when it comes to a crunch, is your job going to be protected? What are those differentiated skills that you possess? What are those skills that are rare and unique to you? And more importantly, are you constantly looking at what could be that next skill that you have to possess, which can even defeat ChatGPT, which will make sure that you are that human using the AI and you're not the human who lost the job to AI? Principle of variation. And then look at the principle of inheritance. You know, many a times when we look at what are we doing for the community, it comes back to the way we are raising our children. What kind of daughters are we raising? Are we raising our daughters to be intentional career women? Are we raising our sons to be male allies? Are we doing this not so we benefit, but because we want to protect the species called the Indian woman professional? Many a time, there are things that we do for the first time. Tanya Sanyal is a name you may not have heard of. She is the first firefighter in airports, the first woman firefighter in the airports. Something that Tanya Sanyal has done is to overcome that fear of fire and to actually ensure that she learns a new skill. Now that skill is hard-coded in her genetics today. It makes it easier for the next generation to also follow in her footsteps. Anandibai Patel, first woman doctor of India. Cornelia Sorabji, first woman lawyer of India. Urmila Chaudhary, first woman architect of India. Chandrima Verma, first woman IT professional of India. All of these firsts, what do they do? They have created a template that can be followed by their daughters and sons and by the next generation. I want you to think deeply about this. What is the thing that you are going to be the first at? You will have something that you can be the first at. What is that? I want you to reflect on it today as you're here at Target Elevate. And finally, the principle of competition. If there has to be that one skill in which you are better and therefore you can outrun predatory global talent, if you were to call it that, or if you were to say that if you are to secure your job, how will you identify what are those skills that are to be used for fighting the competition? And that is not just enough if you are fighting the competition yourself. How are you helping other women fight the competition? At Avtar, we ran a study called the Top Cities for Women in India, and we released the results about a month and a half ago. Do you know, there are thousands and thousands of women professionals in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities who are waiting for mentors, who are waiting for role models who will teach them how to code, who are waiting for role models who will teach them how to build intentional career paths. There are women in Hubli, in Mysore, in Dharwad. There are women who are geographically, in proximity to you. And there are many, many methods that you can use, hybrid methods to help them skill. And that is what we have to do as a species. As the Indian woman professional, what we need to do is to employ these principles of variation, of inheritance, of competition. And before I sign off, I want to tell you, many a time we quit in haste. We don't want to take those risks. We believe that risk-taking is unhealthy to us in our careers. But I want to tell you, don't quit. Don't quit before the miracle. Because you know the incredible things about miracles? They happen. But the even more amazing thing about miracles is, while many of them may happen to you, many more happen through you. Thank you and have a great conference.